How long does it take to become a millionaire? That's exactly what we're going to look at in today's video. Now, I'm not talking about winning the lottery or inventing Facebook. If you do either of those things, congratulations. But I'm assuming we have no money to start with. We've got a job, we're working, we're trying to spend less than we make. We save money each month. And the question is, how long will it take? And what we're going to do, we're going to look at this from a number of different ages. We're just going to assume, for the sake of our discussion, that we want to be a millionaire by the time we retire at age 65, and then look at how much we have to save each month to accomplish that, assuming we start saving at different ages. And to do that, simple spreadsheet I've put together. So of course, we need to know the return. What are we going to earn on our investments? And we're going to start with 9%. Now you can see I've got 8 and 10% in there, as well as options. And that raises a question: how important is that? It's only 1%. Does that make a big difference? Well, we'll look at that in just a minute, but we're going to assume with 9%. And for this first one, we're going to assume you've got 10 years. So imagine someone hasn't saved at all. They're now 55. They're thinking, oh goodness, I got to start saving for retirement. Their goal is $1 million. And so what do they have to save each month? So we're going to try to get this number up to $1 million. So any ideas what you need to save each month, assuming a 9% return, to have $1 million after 10 years? Well, let's try $2,500. Not even halfway there. Now we got to really up this. How about $5,000? That gets us really, really close. Turns out it's about $5,200. We won't worry about the rounding. We've got $1,006,000 and change. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Rob, who's got $5,200 to save each and every month? Well, not a lot of people, which is one of the reasons why starting as early as possible is so important. In fact, time is our superpower if we start early, and that's really sort of the point of this video, as we give ourselves more and more time. So let's just do that. Let's say, okay, we'll stick with the 9% return, but let's assume we don't wait until we're 55. We still start sort of late, but we start at 45, and that gives us 20 years until we retire at 65. And what we'll see here is the power of compounding starting to kick in. If we think about $5,200, half of that, $2,600, whoa, puts us way over our target. That's not a bad number. It turns out, because of the power of compounding, the more time we give ourselves, we end up having to save not just less, a lot less. Now, of course, we could choose to save more, but here we're just trying to figure out the minimum. It turns out it's about $1,500, puts us just over the $1 million mark, just by adding 10 more years to the time we have to save. So you can kind of see where this is going. We'll drop down here now 30 years. So you start at age 35. And I don't actually remember this number, but I'm just going to throw one in and we'll get to it. Let's try $1,000 a month. Look at that, almost $2 million, right? The power of time and compounding. Many times when I'm getting ready for a video, and when I wrote my book, Retire Before Mom and Dad, I would see numbers like this and I would assume there's a mistake. And I can't tell you how many hours I spent checking my math, thinking I got it wrong. And it turns out, no, it's just that the power of compounding is not intuitive. So where do we need to go? I'm not even sure. Let's try 700. We're still over the limit. 600. We're getting close. 500. Okay. How about 550? We'll leave it at that. If you give yourself 30 years at a 9% return, it's $550 a month. By the way, still a lot of money, but boy, a heck of a lot less than $5,200 a month. So if we keep going, as you can imagine, now we're starting at 25. Boy, I don't know, $200? Well, it gets us really close. Let's try 225. That actually overshoots it. So does that. We'll try 215. Oh, we'll leave it at that. You give yourself 40 years. You start when you're 25 to retire at 65. It's just $215 a month. For some, that may be challenging, but it's probably at least doable, and you could work towards that goal. All right. So now, what if we give ourselves 50 years, and at this point you're saying, wait a minute, Rob, I can do the math here. You're telling me I'm starting to save for retirement at age 15. Yeah, I get it. Most people don't do that, but some do. And you might have family that helps you, but let's just take a look at the math anyway. So what are we down to? I'll put down $100. Wow, $100 a month, and you overshoot the $1 million mark. I don't know, 80? There we go, we're getting close, 85. All right, we'll just leave it at 90, whatever that is. Look, we got an extra $50,000. Well, we'll move it to 88. There we go. Even less. So you can see the power that time gives us if we just invest in its simple investing, low cost index funds, leave it alone, ignore it, let time do its work. And I added, actually I've got an extra row in here because I only want to go to 60 years. Now here someone would be 5 years old. So here we're thinking about parents and maybe grandparents that put a little bit of money aside for a child that they will then eventually take over and be adding to it. And at 9%, what do we have to say? Well, let's try $50, and you can see that just puts us well over, almost at $1.5 million. So let's try 40. We're still north of $1 million. 30 is going to put us under, and you can see it. The numbers change dramatically, and it's because we're looking at 60 years of compounding. So we'll leave it at $35 a month. That's it. Save that, and a 5-year-old, by the time they're 65, has $1 million. Now, some of you are thinking, Rob. Inflation. $1 million 60 years from now is not going to be worth nearly what it is today. Of course it's not. And of course, hopefully, whether you're starting at 5 or 15 or 35 or 45, hopefully you'll be increasing your savings. And these are just examples, but they do underscore the awesome power of compounding and specifically the power of time. We want to start as early as possible. Now, I promised you we'd look at the return rate and see just how important that is. So let's do that. We've been assuming 9%. So we'll pick 30 years here. So this is someone who's 35. They start saving for retirement then. And well, what if we go to 8%? So remember, we're at $1,000 or $1 million, and we'll just call it $1 million. We'll round it. That 1% drops us almost $200,000. It's a big, big deal. Now, of course, maybe we get lucky and it's 10%. It raises us actually by a little bit more than $200,000. Now, that's just 1% one way or another. And you say, well, that's great, Rob, but I can't really control what the market returns. And that's true, you can't. But there are some things you can control. For example, you can control the fees you pay, which is why I like, for the most part, low-cost index funds. They're just a fraction of 1%. Think a couple of basis points. They're almost effectively free. A very, very inexpensive way to invest. It's also why I don't like to pay an investment advisor a percentage of my invested assets to manage them for me. Now, I manage our own investments, but I understand that folks want someone else to manage their investments for them. Great. But there are plenty of flat fee advisors or advisors that charge by the hour. In fact, I'll have more information on some of those coming up very, very soon. But the real key is we've got to keep our expenses as low as possible, put our investments in low-cost index funds, particularly when we're younger, that are predominantly stocks, not bonds, and then just ignore them and let compounding do its work. It is a marvelous thing, and if you have the time, put it to use by start investing today. Remember, look at the numbers. Even if it's a small amount of money, if you give it enough time, it can turn into a pile of cash. Well, there you go. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Be happy to help you out any way I can. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.